Chapter 15. Dr. Zim was furious. "Where is she?" he demanded, forcing his face into a smile. His teeth looked too big for his mouth. "She left," said Mrs. Gruber, "about half an hour ago. An elderly man with an English accent and two young foreigners took her." Dr. Zim arched an eyebrow that made his forehead furrow all the way up to his cleanly shaved dome. "By any chance were their names Carl and Isabel?" "They didn't give me their names. They simply said they were adopting that girl." "Is that so?" said Dr. Zim. "Tell me, Miss Gruber, do you typically adopt our children to people whose names you do not know?" Mrs. Gruber was about to answer when Dr. Zim held up his gloved hand. It was black, just like his suit coat and slender necktie. "That was a rhetorical question, Mrs. Gruber, meaning I do not expect or want you to answer it." Mrs. Gruber smiled coyly. "I hope this slight glitch will not affect the terms of our financial understanding." Dr. Zim tugged down on his sleek leather gloves. The two men in black suits and sunglasses flanking him inched forward toward the matron. Both men wore earpieces, but they weren't using them. They didn't need to. They were taking their orders directly from Dr. Zim. "If the money is an issue," said Mrs. Gruber, her voice quivering with fear, "we could renegotiate the particulars." Dr. Zim did not answer the woman's question about money. He didn't have time. He knew his rivals from the CMI at least half an hour ahead of him. They also had the Einstein girl, the one Dr. Zim desperately needed for the Corps. But where would Carl and Isabel take this girl genius? Dr. Zim did mental calculus. His minions had, on a tip from NYU teaching assistants, picked up Miss Einstein at a college lecture hall. They had delivered her to the Little Angels foster care facility for safekeeping until Dr. Zim could personally pick the girl up. That meant the girl had been snatched away with only the clothes on her back and whatever item she took to class that day. Her instinct would be to rush back to where she'd been living or hiding so she could gather up whatever meager personal belongings she might possess. That's where Dr. Zim and his associates could grab her. Carl, Isabel, and some old man with an English accent would be no match for Dr. Zim and his two heavily armed, commando-trained companions. "Tell me, Mrs. Gruber, did the girl have any friends here at your facility?" "She was here for such a short time." "Did she have any interactions at all? Someone she may have spoken with?" "Well," said Mrs. Gruber, pondering the question, "last night she was on kitchen duty with a young boy named Quincy. He's a nervous, fidgety type, as skittish as a kitten." Dr. Zim grinned. "And where is this boy now?" "In his room." "Take us there. But unless, of course, you want me to suspend my generous contribution to the great work you personally are doing here." Mrs. Gruber blinked. "Quincy's in room 202 with some of the other boys. It's right this way." Dr. Zim and his two associates followed Mrs. Gruber down the dim hallway. They let her get about 10 feet in front of them so they could communicate in hushed whispers. "Mr. Jimenez?" Dr. Zim said to the black-suited man on his left. "Yes, sir?" "Once we have Miss Einstein in custody, please visit the teaching assistant who helped arrange her transport to the safe house." "Mr. Stark?" "Precisely. He's a loose end." "And what do we do with loose ends?" Jimenez grinned. "We send them to the special place." "Precisely. Greenland, Siberia. Kindly initiate an appropriate relocation package for Mr. Stark immediately." What about Mrs. Gruber there?" asked the other one, out of the side of his mouth. Dr. Zim sighed. "Alas, Mr. Murphy, she is another loose end in need of tying. Might I suggest our facility in the Sahara Desert?" Murphy rolled his thick neck. Several vertebrae cracked. "We'll take care of it, Doc," he said. Dr. Zim smiled. I am certain you will, Mr. Murphy. I am certain you will.